our Director of Recruiting, Steve Wiltfong. Good to see you again. We'll start in Athens, where Georgia held its scavenger hunt. Dylan Raiola was there, but he had to recruit out of town as well. His main target, five-star linebacker Sammy Brown, couldn't make it on campus. And Steve, there's a really interesting story why. Tell us what went down.
Well, one of his main targets, it was a loaded recruiting weekend at Georgia. More on that later. But one young man who was not able to make it was 24/7 Sports #1 ranked linebacker Sammy Brown. I talked to Sammy's dad this weekend, and he told me that he told his two sons, Sammy's got a little brother who's a promising young prospect. He said, I told the boys there's a tree coming down and I'm not toting it. And Sammy and the family, they're going to be taking official visits the next 5 weekends, beginning with Tennessee this coming weekend. And I think that tree, they got tired of seeing it up. You know, they're busy with sports. Sammy goes from football to wrestling to track. This was the weekend to do some yard work. So Dylan Raiola, they wanted to get a little throwing session in. Jefferson High School made the most sense, right? Let's get Sammy Brown out there. They meet at Jefferson High School. You got Jeremiah Smith. You got all the prospects on campus this weekend. Going out to Jefferson High School to throw. Ryan Williams and Sammy Brown was out there, got to hang out with them for about an hour. He talked about the great relationship he's formed with Dylan Raiola. Sammy Brown's going to be back at Georgia the second weekend in June for his official visit. And I like where the Bulldogs stand with him going into his 5 official visits, but certainly a lot of competition with Clemson, Tennessee, Oklahoma, and Ohio State.
Steve, to follow up on that story, a lot of crazy things happen in the world of recruiting. We had Cormani McClain sleep through his alarm on signing day. We all remember that. Lots of recruits will say they have homework or a test to skip out on a visit. But now we have Sammy Brown acting like yard work is more important than visiting the national champs. Where does this story stack up with others you've heard on why a recruit had to miss a visit?
Well, I'm not so sure Sammy Brown would tell you that moving that tree was more important than Georgia's scavenger hunt. I think that was a decision that came from a higher power. Certainly, hey, look, hey, we have sons so they can help us do yard work. It's just nature taking its course. And, you know, Mike Brown has 2 very strong young kids that can help tote a tree, and it had to get done.
Steve, I'm counting the days until my little son can come and help me do some stuff in the backyard as well. That'll be a lot of fun. On campus, though, that a player that did make it was KJ Bolden, the 5-star safety from the state of Georgia. You put in a crystal ball for the Bulldogs. What has you leaning with Bolden, you know, ending up with the back-to-back champs, Steve?
Yeah, well, we've talked about it before on various whip-arounds and recruiting shows that we've thought that Georgia was the team to beat in this recruitment and coming out of another visit. I like my crystal ball. When users come to our website, it reflects what I think the current pulse is. And I think Georgia has set the bar going into official visits. Now you're going to have trips to Clemson, Alabama, Ohio State, and Auburn. So there is a lot of competition. There's a lot of schools that KJ Bolden likes. But I just think Georgia, the relationship with Kirby Smart and Fran Brown, and then this experience, he said this was an experience this weekend, was one to remember. I was able to see the plan that Coach Smart has and also spend time with the other 2024 commits. I think he vibed with Dylan Raiola and those guys, and he likes what Georgia's all about, likes the winning, and said that he thinks that if he goes there and plays alongside some of the guys committed, they can add to the trophy case over the next 3 to 4 years. But I think he feels like he fits in well with his peers, loves the staff, and I think Georgia has set the bar going into trips to Clemson, Ohio State, Alabama, and Auburn. So we'll see what happens moving forward, but I like Georgia.
All right, we talked last week about how Dylan Raiola's commitment could help attract other top offensive players to Athens, and we're already seeing that happen. This past weekend, Georgia hosted top 2024 wide receiver Jeremiah Smith and the top 2025 receiver Ryan Williams. Both are committed elsewhere, with Smith to Ohio State, Williams to Bama. So, Steve, what's the latest on these two?
Yeah, and as we talked about, those guys got to throw passes with Dylan Raiola at Jefferson alongside Jacoby White and Nye Carr, receivers committed to Georgia, tight end Colton Heinrich, who committed to Georgia this morning. And I think that Jeremiah Smith and Ryan Williams both felt like they really fit in with their potential peers at Georgia. Now, talking specifically about Jeremiah Smith, you talk to people that spent time with him in Athens this weekend for his official visit. and they're optimistic that Georgia has a chance to ultimately flip him from Ohio State. But until we see someone actually flip a receiver from Brian Hartline, Ohio State's receivers coach, their offensive coordinator, who does a great job of not only developing players. They just had the number one receiver taken in this past draft. They're going to probably have the number one receiver taken in the next year's draft, and Marvin Harrison Jr. They have guys performing at a high level in the NFL right now from Brian Hartline's stable. And I talked to another source that said, hey, I think unless something happens with Brian Hartline, he still sticks. But again, a lot of people that spent time with Jeremiah Smith and his parents this weekend at Georgia think that Georgia has a great shot here. And as we said last week, that's the school that I view as the biggest threat to Ohio State. You still got Florida and some other schools trying to chip away as well. He's going to be back at Ohio State in a couple weeks. He's going to Florida the first week of June. Ohio State after that, so we'll see what happens coming out of those officials. But they definitely had a good time at Georgia. And then Ryan Williams, longtime commit to Alabama, said it was an enjoyable week. Liked getting around the guys, liked how involved Kirby Smart was in everything. In fact, that blew him away. He was like, he was involved in everything. So Kirby Smart made an impression, and he talked about the standard at Georgia and the alumni there. So he's very familiar with Georgia, and obviously is giving Georgia a look as he continues through his process, which is still kind of in the beginning for him. He's 2025.
Steve, let's stay in the SEC and head to College Station as Texas A&M hosted five-star defensive lineman William Zen Winery. What did he have to say about his stay in College Station and where the Aggies fit into his recruitment?
Well, this is a visit that he's been wanting to take for a while. Look, we've talked about we love Tennessee's position in this recruitment. We think Oklahoma's up there. We're not sleeping on Dan Lanning in Oregon, with Dan Lanning being from Lee's Summit. And then Georgia's got a puncher's chance. He's got an official scheduled there. And then Mizzou's been coming hard. But A&M's a school that he's been wanting to get to, and he finally makes it down there. And he says they're definitely a contender. He enjoyed it a lot. He's got connections with Terry Price and Elijah Robinson, their two-headed monster on the defensive line. He's even got a connection with Bobby Petrino. He talked about if he goes there, he knows he'll get developed as a person and a player. He likes their system, likes their track record of development at Texas A&M. And he said he's going to go back. He's looking to get back to their pool party barbecue in July. An official visit is in the mix as well. And as you guys know, they're not limited to just 5. And even though the schools are limited to how many official visitors they can bring in, you can normally find an extra official in your back pocket for Williams Nwaneri if he wants to come in. He's a guy, I wouldn't be surprised if he takes more than 5 officials before he makes a decision. A&M trending for one of those.
All right, on the West Coast, USC hosted 5-star Bryant Wesco for his first official visit. Clemson, LSU, Oklahoma, Tennessee, and TCU are also in the mix. What are his thoughts on the Trojans, and where do they stand in his recruitment?
Well, this is a school that you weren't hearing a lot about early on for Bryant Wesco. You were hearing a lot about Oklahoma, of course, been there many times. Clemson is a school where they love the culture and the fit, had a great visit there. TCU and what Coach Kelly's done at the position with guys like Quentin Johnson, and then obviously the season they had. But USC is a place that they're excited about. Kicked off the official visits for him, went out there, loved Lincoln Riley's plan for the program, loved Dennis Simmons and his track record of player development. That is one of the biggest components in his process is who has the track record, who can prove that they are the best man to develop him. He's got high goals in football, but certainly in the business world as well. So what USC offers on and off the field in that business capacity was also exciting. You know, they got several other visits coming up. You know, many of the schools we mentioned, LSU also in there, Tennessee also in there, but USC impressed academically, culturally, and Coach Riley's vision for continued excellence was his father's words. And again, they really like Coach Simmons. So USC put their best foot forward this weekend as they hosted some elite players.
USC is trying to close on Oregon, which is up to number 5 nationally. They had the top 2 players from the state of California up in Eugene. That would be Brandon Baker, the offensive tackle, and Aiden Breland, who we discussed with Andrew Ivins earlier on the show. Steve, the Ducks have a ton of momentum right now on the recruiting trail. Are they starting to really make moves with these 2 West Coast 5-stars after this latest visit?
Well, I know that you have intel on these recruitments, and absolutely, Oregon is near the top for Brandon Baker and Aiden Breland. They've been regulars in Eugene. This was their second time in the last month on campus. Brandon Baker talked about the energy Coach Lanning brings and the strong passion that he has for this program, and he can just feel that coming off Coach Lanning that they're going to be a big time program soon. And he says he sees that building with the season they had and with the way they're recruiting and hitting the portal. And then Aiden Breland said he had a great time. He feels at home. And Eugene also talked about Coach Lanning and his coaching staff taking the time to explain their plan for him as far as player development. He saw what Lanning helped build at Georgia and sees it brewing at Oregon. And just Tosh Lupoy, Tony Tiotti, he talked about the genuine family feel he gets from them as well. And so those guys are very comfortable at Oregon. And their teammate, receiver Jack Ressler, I crystal balled him to Oregon as well recently. I love where the Ducks stand with him at the receiver position. They have 3 receivers they love in the fold, and I think they would love to add Jack Ressler as the slot guy to complement Dylan Grisham and Jordan Marshall and Tyseer Denmark.
And we'll end here with another big commitment in SEC country over the weekend. Alabama lands in-state 4-star defensive lineman Jeremiah Beeman. Steve, what makes him such a force on the line of scrimmage, and what is he bringing to the Tide?
Well, 10 sacks, 3 interceptions as a junior, two-way guy, 6'5", 270 pounds, extremely long, very high ceiling. This is a young man that has barely tapped into what he is physically. And I talked to his trainer, Leonard Stevens, yesterday about the commitment. And he said that this is a young man that's in the facility every day, never satisfied with his last accomplishment. So he brings the right DNA that Nick Saban looks for in a prospect. This young man's hungry to be the best player he could be in Alabama. We've certainly seen them develop guys like that. And he trains at the same facility as DJ Dale and Byron Young, so they're very familiar with the Alabama program. I know Georgia's got the #1 recruiting class in the country right now, but Alabama, they have the #1 class in my favorite metric, pound for pound, highest ranking per commit. That's where Alabama stands, #1. They have a special class brewing as well in Tuscaloosa. And this young man, Jeremiah Beeman's the latest to join the fold.
All right, great stuff as always, Steve. Thank you. And don't miss any of our great content here on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. Subscribe to the channel, turn those noties on for the best analysis in the game, plus live commitments from your favorite top recruits. You can only find it here, 24/7 Sports.